morning, everyone. You are listening to Two Moms and a Couch. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Christina.
And today, actually, we're talking about money, which is a
Yay.
really broad topic, but it's something that both of us realized we really enjoy talking about. And there are so many different things you could talk about when it comes to money. I know that, so money makes the world go around. You need it when you have kids, no matter what anybody thinks about it. And I think that unfortunately, too many women or moms don't think enough about it and how to set themselves up for success in the future. And I know you and I had talked about this. There's different ways to do it, right? There's your career and work and how you set up like earnings in a family, and not all women work outside the home, and that's perfectly fine. And then there's also like how you think about money, what value you attribute to it, because a lot of people realize, and this is something I learned when I was doing financial coaching, which is a lot of people realize the need to have access to money but still think very negatively about it. And when you look at like the images in society and what the message sort of that is communicated about money, wanting it even, thinking about it, especially as a woman, it's all negative. There's all these phrases, money is the root of all evil, all these thoughts that people have, and a lot of them are subconscious. That, most people, and I had a coaching business, which I may or may not come back to at some point, doing exactly this, which is money mindset and like, thinking about financial planning, not actually planning financial planning, but just thinking about money and how you set yourself up. And it just seems to me that from all of my interactions in that business, that women especially attribute so many negative connotations to thinking about money, about having it, about trying to increase wealth, build, financial cushion, all of that.
Yeah, no, I definitely think so. Money, it's like always been like this taboo topic.
Yes.
Right? It's like you're not allowed to talk about money, or it's like distasteful to talk about money. You shouldn't talk about how much money you make or how much
money
things
and
cost.
religion, right?
Right, exactly. And it's like, we're taught that, like, and inundated with that growing up. So, of course we're going to have these negative connotations when it comes to money. But the thing is, like, people who do have money are not the people who are shying away from talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
They are openly talking about their
Exactly.
money, their assets, and their, next ventures, and, how much money they want to amass. And, I think that I completely agree with you. Like, all of the different like phrases and these limiting beliefs that we hear about money, it being the root of all evil, or money doesn't buy you happiness, and all of those different things. While there's some truth in that, because too much of a good thing is going to, spoil it for the rest of us. I get it. But those outliers, like the folks who are kind of taking it to the extreme and turning it into a negative, like, doesn't apply to the rest of us. So I've, kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well, but here's the thing. Like, I personally believe that money doesn't do anything. All it does is give people the freedom to be who they really are. So if you are evil, like people say money is the root of all evil. If you are evil internally, money's going to bring that out, because without money, you have to guard that part of yourself a lot more, because you need to get stuff done, right? And and I think, like, I have talked to a lot of women, a lot of moms, and their biggest struggle, especially in situations where they're in an unhappy relationship, they don't have control over their life, it's because they do not have money. They don't have the ability to pick up and leave an abusive situation, for example. They don't have the ability to walk away from a job that is horrible, right? Because there's no we have not taught people in general in this society what to do with money. Like this whole idea of like the American dream and a home and a white picket fence is all, I'm sorry to say this, bullshit. All of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's not, the American dream is to have the freedom to be able to make choices about your life. That's what
Yeah.
should be the American dream. Not, I'm
Completely
going to
agree.
go buy a house and get stuck to something that costs me money every month and ties me to whatever life I've chosen to live at that moment. Because life
Yeah.
changes. Things happen all the
100%. Yeah.
time.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. Like in terms of the American dream, like it is so much more about opportunity than it is
Yeah,
about the capitalism, the consumerism. And we've turned it to make it be so much about the consumerism, about having the biggest, the nicest house on the block and
exactly.
having the 2.5 children and all of that. And that's not what it is. Like this is supposed to be the land of the free. And listen, we've gotten it wrong in a lot of areas in history, but that freedom and choice, the right to open a business, whether you are a man or a woman, and the progress that we've made over time, I 100% agree. Like
Yeah.
that's the American dream. And I mean, I think we're jumping right into the deep end, like about talking about like that freedom to leave like an abusive
Yes.
relationship. But I think that's so important. Listen, I don't care, man, woman, however you want to identify as, it is so unbelievably important, even if you're in the relationship or in a marriage right now, that you're not the primary breadwinner, or your spouse is the one who brings in the dollars and you're at home or whatever, however that's set up. Even if that's the circumstance right now, it's so important from a mindset perspective, in my opinion, to know that you can financially support yourself and be willing to put in
Yeah.
that effort to make it happen. Because like you said, anything can change. And, a marriage can dissolve. It could turn, unhealthy. You could want to
Yeah.
leave a relationship. But having that grit and that mindset of, okay, well, this stopped working out. So now I have to be able to provide for myself, but not only provide for myself, my child as well, but not only provide for myself and my child, but also thrive as well. That mindset is so, so important. And I feel like, to your point, especially, women, unfortunately, we're not taught to have that provider or that, I can handle things mentality. And
Which is
it's so
ironic,
important.
right? Because in this day and age, we
We're
now,
handling the
and
things.
I don't remember the statistic, but I remember reading somewhere that like 50% of women are the main providers, like the main breadwinners in their households.
Yeah.
Like there's larger number of women that are out earning men as a general rule now in
Yeah.
2023 than there ever has been in the history of our young nation, right?
Yeah.
And our mindset hasn't caught up. Like we're finding ourselves, it's really interesting because if you watch social media, which I don't always, that's not a good measure all the time, but if you watch sort of the trend of frustrations that women are expressing, it's this frustration that, look, we're earning as much money, we're still doing all the like child rearing and home care, and we're not getting any help. But they're not thinking about, okay, how do I set it up so that my life works the way I need it to, right? And it's not just about leaving, a relationship that doesn't work anymore. It's even as a family, how do you set yourself up so that if something happens to the main provider, whether it's you or your spouse, your
Yeah.
family's still okay.
Yep. That too. Yep.
Like we're right now, we're this is this is what I see as the gap between like the super like wealthy successful folks and the people who are like middle income, and that's gap is widening. The gap is that those who are super wealthy, they're not earning based on the time, like the hours in the day. Like they're not going to a job and getting paid for their time at that job.
Yeah.
Their income isn't dependent on that. So if they take a vacation, or if they don't go to work one day, or they get sick or something, their income doesn't suffer significantly, right? Like
Yep.
they still have streams of income that are earning. So like, I think we talked on the last podcast about education and sort of like what happened around the industrial revolution and how our system is set up. I think the reality is that we have taken the entrepreneurial spirit out of what was the fabric of our country and have
Yeah.
moved it into this, like, peons in a clog of that is the corporate world, which I don't have anything against the corporate world. I work in it. I think it's great. I love working for the company I work for, but our family has made the decision to use the income I do make to put it into investments that will continue to generate income going forward. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. And we're not going to talk about what's the best way here. That's not that's not our purpose. But yeah, and I think like it's interesting because you and I talked a little bit before, like you left the corporate world to start a consulting business. And I think that's fantastic because that's given you a certain amount of freedom and control over your time to make choices like be able to homeschool or be able to spend time with your kid as you need it.
Yeah. Well, and so like so many things there. Like one, like I completely agree, like in terms of, I guess, cultivating children, right, who go through the public school system or even private school, honestly, like, it's really just getting them ready to follow orders. I think you mentioned that before in like one of our first conversations, but like, be able to follow some orders in the corporate world, to be able to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day and 40 hours a week, or more than that, and feel like everything is riding on getting their job done, when at the end, like in a lot of cases, the world's not going to fall apart if that job doesn't get done, or there might be a more efficient way for that job to get done, right? But I do think that some people would thrive like in the environment, like they need that boss, or they don't want to have to deal with all of the things that go along with running and managing a business. But I think that those people still need the life skills, right?
Yeah.
Still need to be taught, well, this income that you do get from the corporate world, from your job, this is what you need to do with it. If
Right.
you want to make a change in your life, well, this is the work, this is the effort that you have to put in to be able to make that change. Like that peace, that hunger, and that, willingness or the ability to figure things out, even if you're working in the corporate world. I think that's kind of the thing that's been lost,
Yeah.
And I think it's so important to have conversations like these, not only for adults but also for kids, right? So that they can be brought up, like continuing to have that in the back of their mind, so that if they ever need to tap into that ability to figure things out, then they are able to, like in the later years, and so that they can set themselves up for success when it comes to money. And I completely agree, like the folks who are financially free, will say like their line time is not tied to their money. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
They could be out for a month, but they're still bringing in money, and they have, multiple streams of income. And I think it's like on average, what you're supposed to have 7 streams of income,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Minimum.
Yeah, at a
Right.
minimum. And like, and it's, because like if one dries up, and especially if, a couple of those do require you to trade your time for money, well, you still have the other ones to back you up or to support
Right.
you. And, I think it's really important in this day and age that many of those streams of income are, what's called passive income. And we'll
Well, and let's
probably
be
have to do,
clear, passive does not mean you get to just set it and forget it. There is no such thing as
yeah.
truly passive income, no matter what anybody tells you.
Yeah, and I think we'll have to do like a completely separate like
Yeah.
conversation about like passive income. But there are high passive income things, and then there are low passive income things, and I classify those
Yep.
as, highly passive is something that you have to do some initial work to get it set up, and maybe a little tiny bit of maintenance on a monthly basis. But really, once you do the initial work, it is going to work for you down the road. So something like investing in large cap cap stocks where, you can trust that the company is going to be there for a while, and you just kind of automatically set up your bank to dollar cost average like over the course of a year, and you collect the dividends. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's pretty passive. Or if you create an online course, you have to put in a lot of work up front to get that course created. It's a lot of effort and energy, but you can put it on a platform and maybe do some social media content, or maybe you hit a home run and you did a YouTube video that gets millions and millions of views and
Right.
keeps going for the next few years, and then hey, that's a highly passive income stream. But then there are like really low passive income streams, something like doing a podcast, honestly, or
Yes.
doing a YouTube channel that hasn't quite hit its stride yet. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can make some income on a regular basis, but you have to keep on making content on a regular basis too.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to think about, well, how can you diversify your income streams? People talk about diversifying a portfolio when it comes to stocks. Well, it's just as important to look at it from an income perspective as well.
Yes.
So if your primary source of income is the one where you're trading your time for money, like a job, a 9 to 5, well, what else can you do on the side that might not take quite as much time,
Yeah.
that takes you, 2 to 4 hours a week, but is able to generate you some income? And then what else can you do maybe on the weekends
Right.
where you can bring in a little bit more income, and starting to think and look like that, but then take it a step further to say, well, what am I going to do with that extra income that's coming in? Because you
Exactly.
don't want it to get absorbed into the regular
Right.
day to day. You don't want to squander it. And I feel like that's what happens a lot of times. We
Yeah.
end up
Well,
yeah,
people increase their standard of living. Um,
exactly.
and they like start
Yeah.
getting stuff that creates a cost or a tax
Yeah.
on their income.
Lifestyle creep.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think it's really important. Like, you know, I don't know about you, but for me, like as a mom, there are times like I want to get my kids everything. Like I want them to have like more comforts and like access to things. I'm not worried about things necessarily, but like I want them to have access to like classes and, activities and experiences. And I think sometimes it's hard to figure out like what is something that's going to enrich their life and what is something that's just sort of extra,
Yeah.
right? Because like from what I've seen, you could spend every penny on like activities and things for your kids and still have other things to give them, right? Like other stuff to spend on them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. Like I think there definitely is like a fine line, with that. I'm somebody like when I, became a mom, I did okay. Like I've always had like a big work ethic, and I've always been a
Mhm.
hard worker, and enjoyed like working. I've always aspired to be an entrepreneur. Like I just knew, like even from when I was a teenager, that's the path that I wanted to go in.
Mhm.
I'm not good at being an employee. I'm not good at being
Yeah.
told what to do. Like just being
Yeah.
completely straight up. If you tell me to do something, but I feel like there's a little bit more of an efficient way to do it, I'm gonna do my way and not the way you
Yeah.
told me to. And while listen, that quality also made me incredibly successful in the corporate world. So
Yeah,
I'm not
I
gonna
bet.
sit
Yeah.
here and act like, but I'm still not particularly employable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like I don't want to be chained to you. Like I just don't. I want to do my own
Mhm.
thing. I want freedom and flexibility in my time. But I was doing okay. But when I realized that, I was, a mom, that really kicked me into high gear, because I didn't want my little one to not have, opportunities. So I I guess like my mantra is like I would not say no to my child just because I couldn't afford it. And that was really
Yeah.
important to me. Um I'm okay with saying no to my kid. Like don't get me wrong. Like
Yeah.
I think no is really healthy and really important for children to hear, because the world is full of no, and then it's, well, what do you do after you hear a no,
How do
right?
you
And
handle, yeah, how do you handle hearing no?
exactly. Yeah, and like understanding, why a no is a no, and all of that stuff, which we can talk about too.
Yeah.
But that really kicked me into high gear. When I had my little one, how old was I? 22, I think. I was 22 when I had him. Yes. Okay. I'm not mathing well right now, but I was 22 when I had my little one.
It is 6 o'clock in
And
the morning.
right. So 22 when I had him, and I think I was making, I want to say like my base salary was about $40,000 a year when my son was like just before turning one. But I was also bringing in bonuses and commissions and different things like that. But really, all in, I was making maybe $55,000 a year. So not a bad income, but nothing amazing either. But
Yeah.
with the whole marriage thing not working out and stuff like that, and just knowing that I wanted to give my little one opportunity, I got to work. And unfortunately, the path that I went in was in the corporate world, but I'm thankful for it because I learned and I grew a lot by learning how to take control of my career, but I guess demand it of the corporate world essentially. So I,
Yeah.
I went in like just a couple of short years from making that, 45 to or 40 to $55,000 to, making six figures by the time I was 25. And
Yeah.
I think, and a big part of that was because, like you, I wanted to be able to give those experiences to my little one, and I always have. But for me, experiences are more like, hey, let's go out and do things. Let's go to Disney. I want to have Disney passes, and people can, think whatever
Well,
they
yeah.
want about that.
It
But
doesn't
that's
have
what
to
I
be
want to have.
Disney. If it makes people feel better, think about some other like theme
Yeah.
park
Well,
that you
we
like
we have all the
Legoland or
parks.
whatever. Yeah.
You know what I mean? We have all the parks. And that to me is like really, really important. Is like, okay, on the weekends, we always have something to do. We can go to Busch Gardens, we can go to SeaWorld, we can go to Universal, we can go to Disney, we can go whatever it is. We always have something to do. And that was always my mentality, like ever since he was about, 2.5, 3. I want to always have something to do. We are gonna go to the zoo. I'm gonna, spend my money on
Yeah.
these types of passes that give me access to things for my kid to do. And I know that there is also the sports and the things like that. And, we've done that. I did the kiddie soccer, and I, tried to get him to try soccer again when he was older, or martial arts and karate. And we've
Yeah.
dabbled in all the different things. And I definitely want my kid to be able to try it. But if you don't want to stick with it, if you're not passionate about it, I'm not forcing you to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to just have the income or use your money to give children experiences, because that's how they learn.
Right.
And that's how I feel like it's giving them a little bit of an advantage to figure out, well, where do I want my life to go,
Right.
later on? Because it's really just trial and error. Like, even as an adult, everything is trial and error. You can think that you want to be a doctor, and you can go through undergrad, you can go through medical school, you can go through residency, and
Yeah.
you can become a doctor, and then you can get on the job officially, and you can absolutely hate it because it's, compassion fatigue and all that stuff. And then you're like, well, I feel like I'm stuck with it. But no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not. You can
I mean,
change path at any
that
times.
happens to a lot of lawyers, as it all
Yeah.
sounds all well and good when you're in law school and they're talking about like, freedom and, all the
Yeah.
ideals that
But
are
when you're
like
really
built.
doing the
Yeah.
work and all that admin that goes along with the lawyer job
Yes.
that a lot of people don't talk about, there's so much administrative work with being a
Yeah.
lawyer, so much research, so much writing that goes on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then you get into the work and you're like, no, I don't want to do this. This is not what was glamorized and
Right.
what I visualized my life looking like. So I feel like the more that, kids get those opportunities to try things and be able to say, well, this isn't right for me, but I want to see what I learned from this, see what I did like, and apply it to
Yeah.
something new, is so advantageous, because you have to do that as an adult too.
Right.
So I don't know, I guess that's kind of how I see like spending my money, like where it's worth it. And
Right.
we can try a million and one different things, and I'm not going to look at it as like a waste of money,
Yeah.
because it's, as long as we can have a conversation about it and understand, like, where to go from here, why it didn't work out, like
Yeah.
I'm good. But when it comes to like more of the material things,
Yeah.
eh, like like, is that really? And I think love languages are important here. Like, Gary Chapman, The Five Love Languages. I think even as children, they have their specific love languages, but for a lot of kids, they just want things
Things, yeah.
because, but love
So how do
languages,
you
I think.
handle, like, I know how we handle things, but like, as you said, kids, especially when they're younger, I think they have a harder time of grasping like the value of like they enjoy experiences, but they still want stuff, right? They still want things, especially when they go to school or when they interact with other kids and the kids tell them about whatever toy, right?
Yeah. I
We
don't know.
tend
Like,
we tend not to buy a ton of stuff. Like we don't
yeah.
we spend money on books and on like things that they can do that will develop their mind. But what do you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I still kind of buy a good amount of stuff for my kid, to be honest, because like I was saying, like with love languages, like my little one is definitely, gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, like, those are really, really up there for him. So, and gift doesn't have to necessarily cost money. It can be me making something for him.
Mhm.
And he'll appreciate that. But I know gifts are important to him, like as a love language, because he's at the age where I can understand and see that, and we can have conversations about that. So I do buy a good amount of stuff. It just depends on what the stuff is. I'm the
Yeah.
type of person who, like, if it's a birthday and my kid is so unbelievably organized, like he'll send me an Apple note with links and everything with what he like wants for
That's
like his birthday.
hilarious.
And I'm like you are totally speaking my love language right now because this is you know what I mean? And I'm like, ah. So I'm like, well, I'm just gonna buy everything on that list, right? Like, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna not. And like, it's not like there's 50 things on the list, like there's 20 or less.
right.
So, and like that to me, and there, I'm like, why not? It's your birthday. But like when it comes to like going out, like to the stores and different things like that, I'm like a, maybe one or two things a weekend type of person. Maybe it's
Yeah.
nothing for the weekends. Um, but there's always a why, like if it's a no on something, then it's like, well, why is it a no? If it's because it's something that's, I don't know, like $75, and I'm not just gonna pick that up as a one-time thing. I'm gonna say, well, that's more of something that might want to put on your birthday list, or, for a special occasion, or that you might want to tell Santa about,
Yeah.
but if it's like I don't know, I guess like every weekend, it's usually weekends if we're going out, like I always ensure that there is a little bit of spending money, discretionary money that, if he wants something, that I'm just going to get it to him. Right now he's like super into mini brands. I don't know if you've heard
I
of
don't
those.
even
It's
know what
like,
that is.
yeah, they like collect them, and they're like these little balls. You buy them and it has like five different surprises in them, and they literally look like miniature food. I don't have an example here, but it's like hot dogs, you know what I mean? Like Oscar Mayer hot dogs, and they look like Oscar Mayer hot dogs, but they're like itty bitty and they're collectible. And it's fun,
Okay.
it's cool, and it's fun, and it's, you want to
Hilarious.
try to fill up your entire collector's guide. So, if we're out and he's like, hey, can I get one of these? Yeah,
Okay.
one, go ahead, just one. But of course I'm also going to buy the books and the stuff, but I don't know, like I guess I'm not a good person to answer that question, because I do indulge. I don't overindulge, but I do indulge, and I don't know, I just feel like that's, part of my job is to make sure that he's well rounded, you know what I mean? um
Well,
but yeah, I don't know.
so that brings me, like you said, discretionary income. So that brings me to another question, which is, um, have you taught your son about money, and at what age? And does he have like his own for the purposes of, understanding how it works and sort of that kind
Yeah, so we've talked about money, I want to say, for maybe the last 3 years or so, was like when we've had like the active conversations about money.
of? Okay.
Especially because I'm somebody who, I love budgeting, and I know that's weird,
No, not
but I
weird
love
at
it.
all, by the way.
Yeah, like I think it's great. It's so much fun. So, I chat with him about that. And what I love about homeschool is that we can bring that into homeschooling. Like that can be part
Yeah.
of our curriculum. And I even, told him that there's a very specific way that I purchase groceries. And I'm like, well, as part of homeschool, I'm going to have you manage the groceries and or, to an extent,
Yeah.
but because we do need things, but like to help you learn. But we have conversations about money. He earns money and has his own money, and sometimes
How does he earn money? I'm curious.
um so it's a little bit weird, but I'm all about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So um I would talk to my kid, and this is when we first started having conversations about money. And I'm like, well, I mean, you've got to figure out a way to start bringing money back in. You can't just spend everything that you have. And naturally, my
Yeah.
little one wants to save his cash, which I love.
Yeah.
That's his natural tendency. But when he wants what he wants, I mean, of course, he's tempted to buy, just like we all are.
Yeah.
Um, but I was like, well, if you're gonna spend, $5, whatever it was, how are you going to replace that $5? And better yet, how are you going to replace it with maybe $10? Like, what are some things that you can do?
Hmm.
And, he's like, well, clean up my toys and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, you should probably do that just because you care about your toys. I don't think you're going to earn money for that,
Yeah.
like in terms of an allowance or whatever.
Right.
And then he's like, well, I don't know, maybe clean something else that isn't mine. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. Like, what else could you do? And then he's like, well, maybe I can sell art. And I'm like, hey, now we're
Oh.
talking.
Yeah.
I'm like, here we go. So he actually designs his own like stickers.
Oh, fun.
And he'll design them on his iPad, and then I'll print them out onto sticker paper. And if you guys are watching the YouTube video, you can see I've got the cry cut here and a silhouette
Yeah.
back here and the printer. But then I'll go ahead and get them onto the sticker paper and cut them out. And I'm like, eventually you have to learn the software yourself,
Yeah.
so that you can do like from start to finish. And then he'll sell stickers like to family, friends, random
Oh,
people.
that's great.
Um,
He's just
yeah,
he sells them in person, or does he have like a social media and sell them online type of thing?
in person, and that's actually our goal like this year, and we can do it as part of homeschool, which is amazing.
Yay.
um is to like get its own website up and running, and create a YouTube channel where he
That's
shows some of that
fantastic.
process and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm all about the entrepreneurship. So I
Yeah.
don't do a traditional allowance. I'm like, no, like use your skills and sell something.
I love that. That's one of the things that we talked about with my son, who the older one, and
Mhm.
he actually has a YouTube channel because I wanted him to know from an early age that he can figure out a way to earn money to build a life for himself doing anything he wants. And
Yeah,
there's not the same limit. I'm not going to say limitations because there were never the same limitations, but there are so many opportunities now with social media, which I didn't have growing up. Like that just wasn't a thing. It wasn't even an option. Um,
yeah,
and so like he loves to build Legos, and we talked about, all right, how can we use building Legos to try to build something else that
yeah,
will generate any kind of income, any kind of money. And so he started a YouTube channel that where like I mean, I'm doing a lot of the work of videotaping him building these Legos. And I haven't got all the videos up, but like we started sort of doing this same conversation that you had. Like when you spend money, how do you replace it? Like what's going to happen when you run out? Like, are you keeping
yeah,
track?
yeah,
I don't, my son's really good. He saves, but when he does spend, like he spends on himself and his sister.
Aw,
So
that's
like
sweet.
there have been times where I will, like he says, like, Mom, I want to get, whatever it is I want to get. We were at the zoo and he wanted to get some bubble wand or whatever. And I told him, like, I'm not gonna get that. That's not in our budget for this weekend. But if you want to, you can. And he said, yeah, I want to get it for me and for Sophia, which your heart melts when you hear that.
Yeah, that's so sweet. Oh my
um
gosh.
yeah. But so he got that, and now like he's, it was expensive. It was like $25 each. So he's like $50 down from his like, his little stash. And so like we talked about, all right, so how do you replace that? Like what's going to happen if you keep spending and keep buying things with that, but you're not putting anything back in, right? And like starting to understand, oh, it's going to go away. So how do I like put back into it? We talked about a lot of different things. We talked about the YouTube business. We even talked about like buying, like going to Walmart and buying like 24 pack of water bottles and going to the beach
and reselling them
and reselling water bottles for $1 each, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I think that's so important, you know what I mean? Like to have these conversations now, and that it doesn't have to be the traditional path, right? Like you're not limited by like, thinking about being a doctor or a lawyer or a, whatever else, you know what I mean? Like just like those traditional jobs that have typically been talked about. Yeah, you can make money in so many different ways, and it's so so important to think about. Now, I like also like what you said there, like when it, he's asking to get this bubble wand, and like the phrase that you used was, it's not in our budget this weekend. And that I think is so powerful, because that's the exact same thing that I will say like to my little one, when it's like a no-go on something that he's asking for. I'm like, nope, that's not in the budget. For right now, like you can wait, or you can, get it yourself. But usually like if it's, if I say it's not in the budget, then he's like, yeah, okay, cool. But I think he's like, whatever, it's fine. But and then that, tells him too, like, okay, well, if it's something I really want, I'm actually willing to part with some of my precious dollars to pay for that. And he feels it a little bit more, and I think that's important. But I think saying it like that is really, really important. It's not just saying no. It's not just saying no, I'm not going to buy that for you, because then that feels crappy for the kid. And it's not just a no without like any reasoning. It's like, it's not in the budget. And it also helps them to learn up and understand, like, well, if things don't fit in the budget, I don't buy them. I'm responsible with my finances.
Right. Well, and I think it's important to talk about, which is, just because something's not in the budget doesn't mean you can't afford it. That's a different message.
All right, folks. So we definitely said a lot more about this topic, and it turned out to be pretty long. So what we decided to do was break this up into 2 episodes. We're going to end this one right here, and then we will pick up in the next episode. Stay tuned.
Thanks, everyone.